Hi, I'm Garrett with IDC Woodcraft, which stands for Imagine It, Design It, and Create It. Today I'm going to give you a very thorough discussion of the BobsCNC E4 router machine. What I'm going to discuss with you here about BobsCNC Evolution 4 covers the Evolution 3 as well. They're also known as the E3 and E4. And the reason it covers that is because it's essentially the same machine. It's built the same way, it has the same design all the way around, with the exception it's just a little bit smaller. So that's why this covers both machines. The reason I want to go so deep into it is I really want to give you as much information as you possibly can so you can make the adequate decision as to whether you want to buy this machine or some other machine. Now, what I want to say up front, if you find this video helpful and it gives you a lot of information that you're looking for, then please do me a favor and like the video, and more importantly, just make a comment of something. It doesn't matter, but comments, that kind of engagement boosts the videos. So if this is that helpful to you, it'll be that helpful for other people as well. I have had this machine for about a month and a half, and I have worked it quite a bit. I use V-carve desktop, and I've made lots of projects. Christmas ornaments, state shapes, which I'm probably going to sell these on Etsy. Bigger ones, my sister wanted me to do this. Tree of Life, that's a V-carving, bitmap overlay that I created, and it came out really nice. State of Arizona, I've been having a lot of fun with desktop, figuring this stuff out. And then I also did this. Now you obviously know this is an ultrasound scan. This is done on a really cheap piece of wood. Most of my projects right now have been done on cheap wood. But this project actually impressed me with this machine because these lines are all 1/8 inch apart, and the machine, even though it danced all over the place to pick up some of these lines, it drew every line where it was supposed to be. Here's a quick 1-minute fast forward video I made of this actually being made, so you can see how this came together. So I practiced a little bit more with shading. So it's the same thing here. These lines are 1/8 inch apart. These are 1/16 inch apart. These are 32nd apart. And you can see that I'm actually creating shapes by doing that. So BobsCNC router is actually doing what it's supposed to do, which you want it to do that. And then there was this project that revealed some issues on this machine, and I'm going to discuss this with you. By the way, it's a beautiful welcome sign. I got tired of seeing all the plain welcome signs out there, and so I created this on V-carve desktop and ran it on this machine. I will discuss this in a little bit. By the way, this is available on Etsy, this V-carve program. There will be a link down below so you can run this project on your machine. So let's take a deep dive into the E4 Evolution 4 BobsCNC router. Before I even get into this, a lot of us will hem-haul around thinking about which one we want to buy because there's a lot of options out there, and we worry about the cost of it. What I'm going to say is pick one, go buy the machine, and start getting your creative energy out instead of hesitating. I held off for a little while. I mean, we all do that, right? This is my little motivation pep talk. If you want to do it, just dive in. You'll figure it out, and there's a lot of help out there. All right, so enough motivation, just do it. Let's dive into the Bobs E4, and we'll talk about the E3 CNC router. We're going to talk about the pros, cons, the customer service, ordering the machine, getting the machine, building the machine, and the pros and cons, maintenance on the machine, and most importantly, the quality of the work that you're going to get out of it. Now, before we get into that, just know that a CNC router is going to do what the program tells it to do. So if you tell the program that to do something, it's going to do it. But there are issues in this machine that you do need to know about that they're not huge, major, but they're there. But there's a lot of good things about it too. All right, first of all, let's talk about the reputation, the customer service. BobsCNC has a really good reputation, and it's what, Bob and Keith, right? And there are a couple engineers, I don't know if they're retired or if they just decided to go out on their own, but they decided to create something a little bit different. So they created a niche with a wood-framed CNC machine, which is definitely a different thing, but they backed it up with exceptional customer service. Meaning they respond to everybody and they respond as fast as they can. When I have sent emails out to them to ask questions, I always had a response back within 24 hours. I had to put a call in asking for something and they called me back in the evening. And then everything that I've ordered from them, I made 3 different orders. I bought the machine, I bought the tool probe, and then I bought something else. And all these items were sent out FedEx. Not at my request, that's just what they do by default. So their deliveries are Johnny on the spot. They're as good as Amazon. So maybe even better. And the response is amazing. On their website, they have their address, they have their phone number, you know who they are in their YouTube videos, and they talk just like you and me. We're average hobby guys or production guys, whatever. So I really admire that top-notch customer service. Now, I just have to say, that was one of the hands-down things that made me buy this machine. The other thing is the build on this machine, and the design. So we'll talk about that. Obviously, it's made out of wood. It's all laser cut. It's a 1/4-inch ply, 9 ply, I think it is. And everything that came in the package was in good shape. The package was in a box about this big, and it was filled with peanuts, styrofoam peanuts. It was a little loose when I got it, the packaging inside. And one box had a little bit of a dent in it, but nothing was damaged, nothing was broken open. Things that needed to be protected were protected well and wrapped good. So it came in as I was totally satisfied with how it was delivered. It came in 2 packages. The box, this frame, the whole machine, and then a separate box for the spoil board, which is a little bit larger. The delivery, the order to delivery of everything is just right on it. So that's a good plus as well. Then came the build of the machine. Now, this thing is held together by a shitload of screws. And you can see it right here, and if I can show you their technique. Okay, so there's a screw that goes in. This board, this piece here fits into this piece, and everything is notched, by the way. Fits into that piece. Here's a notch right there. So in this case, this board here has a notch and it slips up into this thing. So they have a lot of notches, as you can see. And these are machined or laser cut really well to the size of the hole that they're going into. Everything is really a good fit. There's only a couple times where it felt like things wouldn't fit so well. I had to take a razor knife and just kind of clean up the hole a little bit. But most of the time, everything just it didn't slip together, it snugged together, if I can put it that way. All right, and then they put it together, they hold things together with the screws. So you got a bunch of screws that hold everything together, and they have a little T-slot right here, and the screw goes in there. Now they recommend the blue Loctite, the 242 I think it is, or 241. I use the red Loctite. I've always been partial red Loctite. I don't want shit to come apart. And even here, as I've run this, a couple of screws have come out, and it's because I didn't put enough Loctite on. Using the red Loctite, you'll be challenged to get the screws off. I mean, I'm sure you already know that. So your preference, I'm a red Loctite guy. The wiring is exposed. You can see there's a lot of dust here. We'll talk about that in a little while. This is the controller, and I mean, it's okay. I had a wire come out on me at one point. You actually have to do some stuff here to make all this come together right, but they're really clear on the instructions on this thing of how to put this together. There's a couple areas where you're kind of going, I'm not really sure, and you have to guess a little bit. If you read on through the instructions, then yeah, you figure it out. One thing is, in the build, there's a tool list. Make sure you get all the tools. I ran in, I was one of those guys, oh yeah, I can figure it out. We all do that. And the you need the tools, so get them. The instructions are available free for download right now off their website, so you can get the tools ahead of time. The instructions are very well put together. Like I said, there's a couple points where it's, you're just not sure. Anyway, let's get back to the wiring. What I don't like is there's a lot of exposure in the wires, particularly the one that goes to the carriage. It comes around. You just have to be sure that this was pulling, look at that. I didn't realize that. I got a wire out. It's a good thing I did this video. And that might explain why I was having another problem with this machine. So overall, the build went really well. It took about 8 hours to build this machine. So expect that kind of time. It's a lot of fun to build. It's a beautiful work of art. And you can tell as you're building it, these guys really put a lot of love and thought into everything on this machine. All their laser cuts, wherever possible, they made sure that they rounded all the corners. Yeah, if you can have round corners, to eliminate all stress areas. You can see there's a lot of ribbing in here for structure. The operation aspect of this machine, it runs on these metal rails here. Now these are not polished rails, but they're adequate for the job. The machine is supposed to have a .002 tolerance. And I just want you to see the bearings here. It rides on these bearings there and there. And the bearing is on an offset shaft, so you can twist the bearing to adjust your carriage into the guide rails, so it runs securely. It's belt driven, so you have on the gantry there's 2 servo motors. You got this one here and one on the other side. It's a mirror, and on both sides there is a limit switch that is set in your home position, and that's how this machine sets itself. It's self-squaring. When you bring the machine home, it touches both limit switches and it sets its point on that, and then it goes on out and both motors are synced together. Now, one of the things, I'm not sure if this machine, if these servos are communicating through the controller for the feedback to let them know that they're still in sync with each other. I'm saying they may not be, but I'm not really sure, so I can't really go there. All your wires, I talked about wiring over here, but they come out over here. They tell you how to wire it. They provide everything. You want to get a few extra wire ties with this thing. Anyway, as far as your drive, on the gantry, you got 2 more rails here and the same bearing setup. So there's 4 rollers on each moving part. So there's 2 rollers here and 2 over here, so you have a 4-way hold down. This is, the gantry is also, or the carriage is also driven with a belt. Now here's something I think is very interesting, is the way you tension the belts. So all this is laser cut, and what they did is they actually laser cut the notches for the belts. And you actually slide the belt in to this piece of wood. Now this is one of the things I don't really like about this machine, but it seems to be working. I probably have to tighten this belt up a little bit, but because it's all wood, this is a wooden piece. You have to use this screw here, and you have to use a jam nut or nut to jack this thing out a little bit to get the tension on here. And I didn't really like that so much. The one on the other side, they got it on both sides. Essentially, whatever's on this side is on that side. Motors, switches, belts, guide rails, everything. It's a mirror image. So the other side, it was really tight. I really had trouble getting this sliding in and out. And I think that pretty much covers how this machine is built. What it is missing is, I noticed after I started running it, the guide rails are exposed. You're routing, you're generating a lot of dust, and so the dust gets thrown over and it builds up on the guide rails. And the rollers, as the gantry comes across or the carriage comes across, it rolls over those chips and it mashes the chips down on to the top rail. And of course that's going to cause a little bit of pressure on the chips. You can see it right here, pressure on the guide, on the rollers. And that's going to cause a maintenance issue, which I've discovered already. I am going to do a move on the machine and I want to show you what exactly happens. Here's what I think the result of this chip buildup ends up causing. If you watch this bearing here, I'm going to just wiggle the gantry and you'll see that it's loose. So you can see it's moving up and down, and I can sit there and freewheel it with my finger, which means it's out of adjustment. It's an easy adjustment by turning this little nut right here. That'll tighten things back up, but that's one of the maintenance issues that seems to come up from time to time. The chip buildup, I think, aids to that over a period of time. The other thing that's going to cause these to loosen up is if there's a bind or a jam. And I've had that happen, like when I ran the spindle into the part. I had my 0 set wrong, and that loosened up the bearings on the carriage right there. And so I had to tighten up both of these bearings on both sides, get everything readjusted, tram the machine back in. So that's one of the maintenance issues you're going to deal with. So I've come up with a little cheesy solution to this chip problem on the rails. You'll notice, first of all, there's a hole right here in the sidewall. I don't know what that's for. There's nothing in the instructions that say anything about that. However, that's a point where the dust goes through. So I take painter's tape and basically just cover up that hole. And in order to keep the chips down off the rail, I will take painter's tape as well, run a piece as long as the machine. Sorry about the noise. And I simply put it on like that, and then fold it over. Now you'll need to take another piece of painter's tape and put it underneath, because as you can see the rollers are right there and they can grab this tape. So you either put a bunch of sawdust on this or put a piece of tape underneath it and bend it over like that, and it does a good job at covering the rails. I will probably come up with a cover at some point. So that's my solution to this problem. I don't have a solution to these rails here. We'll come up with something later. Now, as I said before, everything is run on those bearings. So you have 2 here, 2 there. You have a mirror image of this machine. If you just split this machine in half, it's a mirror image on the other side. So everything that's here is over here. Okay, you've got the 4 here on the carriage up and down. You've got the 4 on the y-axis. The only thing that's not belt driven is the z-axis. This is actually a little screw. This is a Acme thread, I believe, or a butterfly thread. So that actually works pretty well. The machine's movement is actually quite good. I don't know if this belt still feels nice and tight. The way you tighten up this belt is by a little unique method here. You've got the belt on a pulley here. It's mounted on this board. There's another board behind it. And then you got that little screw right there with a little nut that's pulling it back. Now that's an M4, which is relatively small. This is something I didn't really like. And this board right here, that's the backing board. It's held on with a zip tie. It allows it to slide. I mean, that's just the homegrown part of the machine, but it seems to be working. I've not had an issue with this belt getting loose. The adjusting screw is right there in that little hole. I can't get the camera in focus, but you get the idea. And you can see there's a little nut there. Actually, assembling this part of the machine was a little bit tricky as well. You have to use tape to hold the belt. They use a washer in there too, so it makes things stronger. What you see right there, that's a piece of plastic. You have to have something in there to hold things together when you assemble it, because nothing's screwed together until it's assembled, and you can't reach it until that time, because you have to slip this belt on. You'll get it when you get the machine. So the belt tensioning is on the front. As far as the belt holding on the back side, it's essentially the same thing, but it's not screwed in place. It just slips through. It's stopped on this little backing board. So that's like a little T-piece with the notch just cut out in it. Ingenious little thing. I didn't trust it at first, but it's holding up quite well. So let's get down to where the rubber meets the road. What does this machine do as far as its performance? So the machine does what the program tells it to do, and it follows those moves well. I have had a couple of experiences where there's a deviation in the tool path where it was supposed to go, like a slight offset, and I think that was my programming. I'll do another video when I get to that and understand exactly what I did. However, it does seem to show up just a little bit. So let's talk about this sign here and how things have shown up on this sign. What came out good, what came out bad. It's just given that this is cheap ass wood. This is the pine that was left over after making 2x4s that wasn't worth 2x4s. So they said, what can we do with it? We'll make it into shelving material. So it's just glued together, really loose grain. So I have to take that into account that I got crap wood. So as far as the tool position offset, I did a round over on this part of the board here, all the way around. And what I did is I took a quarter, this is a 1/2 inch round over, so it's got a 1/4 inch diameter. And I took a 1/4 inch end mill and came around the outside, or from the middle or the bottom of the round to the outside, just to create that clearance. And then the round tool would come in and just have a 1/2 of its diameter to cut. And so in the bottom of it, I've got a nice round, but it's actually starting to come back up just a little bit. And that's showing up on the bottom of the part, but it's not showing up on the top so much, which tells me that there may be a slight deviation in the machine. I find that V-carve does what you tell it to do. And this line relative to that line was done with an offset, but both these tools followed the same line here. So there should be no deviation right there. So it seems like the tool, the sign was laying on the table like this. It seems like when it was making that cut, the round versus the clearance was off that way a little bit relative to where it should have been on the sign. So I've seen that a couple times in my cutting, not a lot. It didn't show up in the lettering, which, I mean, I'm happy about that. So I'm not really sure what's going on. And that was 2 tools. The lettering and this recess here was done with 2 tools. The V carving itself, this is actually done with a V bit, and it comes out beautiful. You know, every time I've done a V carve, it came out great on this machine. Now you can see on this swirl right there, this came out really nice. I mean, given that this is crap wood, the tool broke some of these corners. This was cleared out with a 1/4 inch. Everything in this recess was done with 1/4 inch for clearing, and then I came back with an 1/8 inch router bit. They were both up bits. I actually broke my down bit. So I recommend, if you decide to do something like this, do it all with down bits, all your woodworking. By the way, this sign program is available on Etsy. There'll be a link down below in the description. The lettering, I think, came out beautiful. It left sharp corners everywhere that a sharp corner was supposed to be. It left a sharp corner. So the profile in X and Y, I've been quite happy with. It's the Z position that I seem to be struggling a lot with. I even resurfaced this bed, and it still seems to be out for some reason. And I'm not sure what's going on. If it's the machine, if there's a twist in the gantry, that actually concerns me a bit on this machine, that I'm not able to get consistency on the bed even after I resurface it. And it really shows up in this sign. I hope you can see this in the camera. I'm going to reposition my camera so we can get a better look at this. This whole surface was roughed out with a 1/4 inch end mill, and then all the fine stuff was done with the 1/8 inch end mill. And it was done in 3 passes, and it's a 1/4 inch deep. I want you to see if I can show this to you. There's a deviation all over this thing with that 1/4 inch end mill depth. You can see it there. Even given the crap wood, this should not be like that. That's actually a significant little drop down, and it clears out down there, comes back. It's gone there, but it's here, there in the same tool pass. It shows up everywhere. And I mean, this is tough sanding to get out of this thing. You can see it significantly there. So I don't know what's going on there. I'm telling the program to go to the same Z height. So this appears to be an issue with this machine. Now this may be related with the biggest concern I have on this machine. As you know, when the tool is moving, there's resistance. So if the carriage is coming this way, here's your end mill, it's not wanting to move forward. You know, it's making a cut. So every time a cutter comes across, it's digging in, and then there's pressure built up, so you're getting a little resistance, and then the cutting edge drops off and it snaps back. And so that a lot of rigidity needs to be built into this in order to overcome that. So what happens is when you're getting that snapping, it's actually going up into the router, and you can see this motion. I am barely touching this. I would say I'm putting, combined from above and below, maybe a pound of pressure. So there's a lot of deviation, and that seems to be translating into the gantry as I'm doing this, but it's hard to see the gantry move. So I think most of the motion is right here at the rails. Now I can move this guy around, and the bearings, the roller bearings, are tight everywhere. The up and down bearings and these bearings all feel tight. So this motion is moving into these rails. I can see the rails actually moving a little bit. So it is moving the gantry. The rails are tight inside these ribs. So what that does is that's leaving a bit of chatter that I don't want in my cutting process, particularly in moving in the Y direction. When it's coming in the X direction, it tends to just hold the pressure, but for some reason it seems to show up more when it's in the Y direction, and I'm not sure the mechanics behind that, but this is the biggest issue I have. But now I've got that level surface issue on a machine, on a machine part. I did that with a 1/4 inch. It's a lot of area to be cutting. I should probably do a 1/2 inch, which I don't have right now. So the two big concerns that I have with this machine at this point, after putting probably about 40 hours on it, is this motion here and the Z surface. The things I do like, it seems to be holding well on these XY motions in your finish cuts. I seem to notice a little bit of deviation sometimes. It seems to be in the bigger cut, so that may have to do with that vibration. But this round over had 2 passes, a rough and a finish pass. So that should not have that raised back up. Don't hold me to it that that's a machine. I have to double check my V-carb program and see what's going on there. Now, I've not talked about the E3, which is a smaller working surface. This E4 has a working surface where you can actually cut on of 24 by 24, which I really like, and that's why I bought this machine. Most CNC machines have these weird work bed sizes that you can work with, and most of them are fairly small and strange, 12 by 7 instead of 12 by 12. We use the imperial system, which is inches, versus metric system, which is my preference. I should probably do all my stuff in metrics. But for the size, it's great. The E3 does a little bit smaller size, which means it's going to have more rigidity built into it, just because the gantry is shorter. When you have this issue right here, there's not as much give that can be translated into the gantry. I don't know about this, the Z surface cutting, but you can do lots of little neat stuff that it stays fairly consistent in. These are actually quite detailed state shapes. The movements on this machine, the rapids, are sufficient. All around, it's a beautiful machine. It runs good. It's a good learning experience as you put the machine together, because you're literally going from the ground up. You have to learn how to get the coding to the machine. You have to have the design software. You can use easel. I use V-carb desktop, and that's it. It's a lot of fun to build. Their service is great. The machine runs, if I want to say, is it running as I expected? It's a little bit below par, but my expectation is production, is to make woodcraft stuff that I can sell and on a repeated basis. And I don't think this has the robustness to handle that. Because these bearings, you're going to have maintenance with that. The bearings are going to get loose, and you're going to have to retighten them up. You have to tram the head in, and that being out of tram can have an effect on the surface. And every machine's got its ups and downs, pros and cons, I want to say. This machine, I would say overall the pros are the workspace versus the cost. This machine is $1,000, and for any comparable machines, you're going to get a much smaller workspace for that, metal framed machines. The customer service is awesome. You learn how to run this machine. All the supporters out there, they got YouTube videos out there, and they're very homegrown guys. You can tell these machines are built out of a love and a passion. And I said the customer service, the build is a shitload of fun. You'll learn a lot, and it's going to take you about 8 hours. Yeah, and the machine runs as expected. I mean, like I said, it runs a little bit below what I expected it, but it does what you tell it to do. It's a good hobby machine to be working with and to learn CNC. If you really want to get into CNC or really interested, the E3 or the E4 is really the way to go, mainly because you've got that customer service. You've got people, the owners, they make YouTube videos to try to help you out. And there's a lot of people out there that just love this machine. Go to YouTube. You already know that this machine seems to be preferred by a lot of people. If you want to get the production, do not get this machine. Consider your options and get what you need to get. That was my failing. If I want to be in production, I needed to get a much more robust machine with a much bigger bed size. And now I've got one on order. It's going to cost about 6 times as much as this, and it's still not enough, but I got to stay within my budget. Actually, it's stretching my budget. Hobby-wise, yeah, I really enjoy this machine. There's this aspect about me that just, I like it. And I think it's because there's so much thought and love put into this. And you can tell as you're putting it together. And they're just homegrown people, not trying to impress anybody. They're just trying to make something that people can use and they just took a tangent and did it a little bit differently by making a wood frame machine. And considering wood frame, I gotta say, they did a damn good job at it for what you're looking to get. And it's very light. It's really easy to move around. Okay, so if you're a hobbyist looking to get into CNC and you're not sure what to go for, whether you go for a metal frame or you want to go for this thing, here's what I want to say. BobsCNC, they're out there on YouTube. They talk. They're homegrown. Their customer service is second to none. You know where they're at. They get back to you. They deliver stuff overnight. And there's a bunch of videos out there that talk about this machine and give you ideas. And it's fun to put together. I would say if you're a hobbyist and you're thinking of getting into it, I would go for this, for the workspace too. And there was one other thing I wanted to say and I forgot. I could say CNC is a lot of fun. I would certainly consider it if you're on the fence. Just go for it. Quit sitting there looking at machines and dreading spending $1,000, $2,000. Just get the damn machine so you can start exercising your creativity, and ultimately maybe money will come out of it. One of the things I want to say is, on that note, is you can do amazing things on CNC, as I've done through my years as a machinist. But it's a skill like anything else. There's a learning curve. You're going to have problems. You're going to break tools. You're going to figure out how to make programs, and they're going to be wrong. And learning how to set things up, it's a learning curve like anything else. And it is a skill that you build up with. So be patient. You're not going to make something magic overnight. But it's a lot of fun. So yeah, I give this machine a big thumbs up to the hobbyist for this sense of passion that you see inside the machine, and that it does, for the most part, do what you want it to do. I have to figure out why it's not doing why I'm having trouble on the Z surface. Anyway, that's my take. Do me a favor, if you find this video helpful, that means there's other people out there looking for something that's got a lot of detail in it, talking about these machines. If they're really looking at this, do me a favor and like the video and make a comment. That's what boosts these videos so people can come across them. So if you think this video is really helpful, by doing that, you're going to help it boost so other people will find it and get the same help out of it that you just got. I hope that I have given you enough information to make a decision as to whether you want to buy this type of machine or a more robust machine. And yeah, happy CNC machining. I'm Garrett with IDC Woodcraft, where we imagine things, we design them, and we create beautiful works of art like this welcome sign. And I made this because the welcome signs in the stores are boring as hell. We will talk to you next time.